This video we're going to go over the fill in the blanks from the reading section. So we're going to cover both the drag and drop and select from the list in this one video, and I'm going to share with you strategies that work. Let's get into it. So first of all, the fill in the blank, super important question type. Now you all might have given an attempt, or you kind of know what this question means, so I won't spend time going over that. What I want you to do is ask yourself, when you have got answers wrong in the fill in the blanks, why have you got answers wrong? So think and maybe list down a few reasons about when you given the exam in the past, or when you've done a few practice questions, why have you got the answers wrong in fill in the blanks? And most people come up with a common reason, but I just want you to spend some time thinking about it. Okay, I hope you had spent some time thinking about it. I'm going to share with you the common reasons that I've seen people face. So the first one is options with similar meanings, but one is more appropriate due to a subtle difference. Now, this can happen when you have options where you feel that both of the answers could be correct, and both of the options have similar meanings, but one is correct just because of a small difference in meaning. You can also have an option where a particular word combination is more frequently used in English collocations. For example, now if I say yesterday it was raining very blank in Sydney, and I have two options, one is heavily and the other is hard. So yesterday it was raining very blank in Sydney, heavily or hard. So what do you think is the correct answer? I'll give you some time to think. Okay, so you probably said heavily. So yesterday it was raining very heavily in Sydney. Now, why is heavily the correct answer, and why is not hard the correct answer? I just want you to think about that for a minute. Why is raining heavily correct, and why is not raining hard correct? So the reason you probably selected raining heavily is just because it is a word combination that is more frequently used. You would have read it when you're reading newspapers. You would have heard reporters talk about it on the news when it's been raining heavily, or you might have just encountered this in day-to-day conversations with people. That's a word combination that you've heard a lot, raining very heavily. However, raining very hard is not something that generally people say. But if I said it, you would still understand. If I said yesterday it was raining very hard in Sydney, you would still kind of understand what I said, but it would just sound off. So in instances like this, it's just the word combination that's more frequently used together is the correct answer. And what I've given here is at a very general, basic conversational English. However, in the exam, you're going to get more academic English, but it's the same concept that follows, where it's just that one word combination is used more often, and the only way that you're going to get exposure to those combinations is just by consuming similar content. So reading a lot of high quality English material will help you with that. And if you need help with that, visit the foundational English module, which talks about that in a little bit more detail. Okay, moving on, another common issue that people face is that one option is more appropriate based on the context of the surrounding text, which makes it very important to read and understand the entire text. So now, even though fill in the blanks, you get like a huge passage and then you have blanks in between, sometimes people do not read the entire passage and they just read the sentence with the blank. But oftentimes it can be the next sentence, the previous sentence, that helps determine what the correct answer is for the sentence that contains the blank. So I'll give you an example here. I'm giving you simple examples just so you can identify what the patterns are. Obviously, in the exam or in your practice, you might find slightly different examples. So in this example, we have the man had a blank expression on his face. He was overjoyed after meeting his friend after such a long time. Now, in this particular example, we have two options. One is worried and one is delighted. Now, just by grammar or just by looking at the sentence in isolation, it both could be correct. The man had a worried expression on his face, or the man had a delighted expression on his face. The both sound correct. However, when you look at the next sentence, which is he was overjoyed after meeting his friend, so which would lead us to believe that he would have a delighted expression on his face, because he was meeting his friend after such a long time. So in this particular example, it's only after you read and understand the next sentence, do you know what the correct option is in the first sentence. So things like this is a very common mistake in people who get just below 79 and people who get above 79. I've seen this when I've done practice examples with people. People do not uh, fail to understand the entire context, and oftentimes it causes them to lose on a few blanks, which leads them to miss out on that 79 score. So this is, if you're like few points away, this is something that I've seen a lot of people make mistake on, so make sure that's not you. One option is more logically appropriate based on the passage. That's another reason why you might get the answer wrong. Lack of grammar application is very small in number of cases you might find this to be an issue. I'll give you an example. The nation blank turmoil during the recent war. Now you have two options here. One is suffers and one is faced. I'll give you some time to choose the correct answer. The nation blank turmoil during the recent war. Suffers or faced. Now the correct answer here is faced, just because suffers is the present tense and faced is the past tense, and they said that the war, it was a recent war, so it's something that already happened. So that's why faced is correct, just because of the tense. So the nation faced turmoil. Suffered, if it had an ed, it would have been a more appropriate option. However, because it's the present tense, it's not the correct option. So in cases like this, if you're able to identify based on grammar, that would be good. I don't recommend studying grammar rules. I'll get into like how you should be thinking about this in the upcoming slides. Another reason why you might get an answer wrong. So what I'm doing here is I'm telling you what are the different possibilities of you getting an answer wrong, so that you can avoid these mistakes and you get the answers right. So if you know what mistakes you make, you know how to avoid them. So if you face an unfamiliar phrase or idiom, so for example here, the thief snatched the chain in a dash of an eye. So there are two options here. One is blink and one is opening. Now if you heard the expression blink of an eye, then you know straight away that blink is the correct option. However, if you never heard that expression blink of an eye, then you won't know that blink is the correct option. Opening might sound correct to you. So in certain instances like this, there are certain phrases or idioms similar to the collocation that we discussed earlier, where two words go well with each other. Here you'll have like a series of words that go well with each other, or an expression. Now if you know the expression, you're going to get it right. If you don't know the expression, you're basically going to guess. So again, this comes with just reading a lot. In general, you get an understanding of what are the different types of phrases or idioms that are used frequently in English. I don't recommend going and studying like phrases and idioms. Ideally, you just want to read a lot, and you'll automatically learn these kind of phrases and idioms. Another issue is time pressure. So you might be doing the fill in the blanks, and you might be noticing that you are spending too much time on it, and that's causing you to miss out on this particular question that you're attempting. And then you already have that pressure, and then when you're doing the next question, you're feeling the pressure even more, that you need to complete this question in time, and then that's just like a downward spiral from there. So that's why you want to be aware of how much time you're spending on each question before it gets to a point where you're scrambling to complete questions in time, because your quality of your response is going to suffer and your points are going to go down. So yeah, that's another reason why people struggle in the fill in the blanks. Now I've given maybe 6 or 7 reasons, but what it all boils down to is these 3 things. Essentially, it's like grammar, vocabulary, and meaning. Okay. And an important thing to note is that what Pearson is testing in this question type is an unconscious or an intuitive skill. So they are looking to see if you can identify word combinations that frequently are used together without you having to think about why is it the correct answer. So it's an intuitive skill that is being tested. That's why normally when people who are good at English attempt this question type, they're able to do it in a short amount of time, and someone who needs to think a lot about it takes more time. So, and which is why they face a time pressure, which is why your points reduce. So that's what Pearson is testing here. And there are not many grammar tricks strategies that you can use to help you. So in the speaking and the writing section, we have awesome templates that you can use for to get a shortcut towards getting your 79 plus score, your 90 score. However, in the reading section, apart from the repeated questions, there's not really much that is there in terms of tricks or grammar strategies, right? Either it really comes down to your level of English and whether you get like a repeated question or not. And grammar strategies, I'm going to show you why it fails for, especially when you're aiming for really high score. If you're like relying on grammar strategies, it's usually not going to work just because you do not have the time to think about which grammar like how to apply grammar. So when you're reading a fill in the blanks, you don't have time to think about, oh, is this an adverb? Is this a noun? Is this what part of speech is this? If you're going to be doing that, you're going to be struggling to complete the exam in time and your scores are going to suffer anyway. So again, relying on grammar strategies oftentimes does not help. And I'm going to share with you my grammar confession for the PT academic. I did not learn any grammar rule to get a 79 plus score in the exam. I have an overall 90 score, but I still do not know all the grammar rules in English, okay? And many native English speakers as well do not know all the grammar rules. They only have an intuitive understanding about it. So if you ask someone a particular question about the PT academic and you ask them to solve it, a native English speaker will be able to solve it very easily. But if you ask them, okay, why is this the correct answer, then they'll just say that it sounds right. They won't be able to really give you a technical explanation of what's the grammar rule, right? So even think about your native language that you speak. Now, if I were to say something in your native language, and if I made a mistake, you would be able to pick it up and you would be able to tell me that, Steven, this is not the right way to say it, this is the correct way. But if I ask you like why or what's the grammar rule, you wouldn't necessarily know it. You just know that it sounds incorrect based on your experience and based on you listening to your language, right? So it's similar with English as well. At different levels, you just know from a grammar perspective what sounds right after you've consumed a lot of English on a regular basis. Again, refer to the fundamental English module if you need help with that. So studying grammar is not going to get you a 90 score. Where grammar is useful is to classify an error or isolating an improvement area specifically for the writing section. However, for the writing section you have templates, so even that you don't really need to worry about. So in general, grammar does not work. There's just a few places where grammar could be helpful in case you get this in exam. One is called parallelism, where two or more phrases or clauses in a sentence have the same grammatical structure. I'll give you an example to explain this to you. So this sentence, Olympic athletes usually like practicing, competing, and to eat ice cream sandwiches. So there's one part of this that is incorrect, and that is to eat ice cream sandwiches. So instead, the correct form is practicing. Olympic athletes usually like practicing, competing, and eating ice cream sandwiches. So this is where, because you have practicing and competing mentioned in the sentence, in that list, you also need to have eating mentioned in the last list and not to eat. So either this could be the correct answer, or it could be Olympic athletes usually like to practice, to compete, and to eat ice cream sandwiches. So it needs to be ing all throughout, or the to verb form all throughout. Yeah. So in cases like this where you get a blank here, it might help in narrowing down the option. However, very small number of cases you might get this. But in case you do, you now know what to do. Another method that I've seen helps is the subject and verb agreement. So in this example, the dog blank the cat. So you have two options here: pursues and chase. Now I want you to select the correct option: the dog blank the cat. So the correct option here is the dog pursues the cat, because of if you say the dog chased the cat, it's not grammatically correct, because you need to have a plural verb here with this subject. Okay, so the dog pursues the cat. Now even I fully do not understand like why that's the case, but intuitively I can tell you that the dog chase the cat does not sound right. If you want more details about how that rule is applied, you can click on the link. However, this is an example of what I said, where Pearson is testing your intuitive English. But if you're struggling and you face an issue, you may want to just quickly review to see if by reviewing that rule it kind of helps clicks in your head. So yeah, so even in this case, if you had the dog chases the cat with an S here, that would have been a better option in this blank. Okay, so that is an instance where grammar comes in use. Though, like I said, the problem of relying with grammar is that there's like over 1,000 different grammar rules that are classified in the English language, and you're not going to have time to go over each one of them and apply them in the exam. So I don't recommend kind of uh, following that approach. The repeated question is also super important to do well in the fill in the blanks. Now, I've covered this in the repeated question video. However, I'll just give a quick summary because it's really important. So you want to use this side. We found that this side people get the most number of repeated questions, anywhere from 0 to 70% of the questions are repeated, but usually it's around like the 30% on the at a minimum. I've seen people getting repeated from here. However, it varies between 0 to 70%. But even if you get one fill in the blank that's repeated, that can be potentially like 5 or 6 marks again. So it really helps to do this. And when you're practicing, you're also improving your English because you're reading academic text. So what you want to do is around 700 questions in total for as of today. There's 700 questions that are there in both of the fill in the blanks. So you want to literally go over all of them at least 2 times, depending on how much time you have. You want to go over them at least 2 times as quickly as you can. That should be like your main practice, just going over. You want to be spending most of your time doing this, practicing these questions, going over them one by one, and making note of any answers that you got incorrect. And as you're doing this practice, you're learning word collocations because you're reading academic type English, and it's just going to help you with all of the other things that we talked about as well. So doing the fill in the blanks, so there 700 questions in total. Aim to do that 2 or 3 times at a minimum, and you can also go over the document that's available. I'll put links in the description where you can go over that, and yeah, and there's a document that you can go through which contains all the repeated questions. So that's much more maybe easier to kind of skim through 1 or 2 days before the exam rather than using this tool here. So essentially, you want to be spending most of your time on repeated questions. What I shared with you is the strategies and mistakes that you will encounter as you're doing these repeated questions and as you're doing these practice questions in this tool. So just keep in mind those mistakes that you're making. Make sure that you're learning from those mistakes. And volume oftentimes is the best solution here in fill in the blanks. Just the more you read, the more practice questions that you do, the more likely are you to get them a repeated one in the exam, or you're more likely to come across word combinations that you've used in practice, and the more likely you're going to get a better score in the exam. So spend as much as your time as you can doing these questions if you need to improve in this part of the exam. Okay, I'll see you in the next video where we go over some examples of the reading fill in the blanks, and I'll show you how exactly I would do it, and you can learn from that way. I'll see you in the next video.